episode, we hear from Michael Dantley, Dean Emeritus of Miami University College of Education, Health, and Society. Throughout his distinguished 5-decade career as an educator, Michael has helped define educational leadership scholarship and preparation in so many arenas. Known throughout our profession as a gifted teacher, mentor, and leader, Michael's innovative career has deeply influenced how we collectively conceptualize and theorize leadership. His scholarship focuses on diverse yet intersectional topics such as urban education, Black students and educators, critical approaches, and spiritualism. In our conversation, we trace how leadership frameworks and theory have become more inclusive, including within UCEA. What are some of the pivotal moments in this development? What aspects of work lay before us in the continued evolution of leadership frameworks? Listen here to find out. Hi, Michael, and welcome to In the Lead.
Hello, Monica. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm so looking forward to this conversation. I've been looking forward to it for several weeks now, and so I'm glad to finally have you here, still feeling the glow after AERA.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. There is life after AERA.
Just to get us started, do have a question. You've been a leader in the development and the diversification of leadership frameworks and theory, and how we think about those. What do you think have been some important moments of growth in the development and conceptualization and framing of leadership?
That's a great question, Monica. I think when I became a professor in ed leadership at Miami University, what I had seen most of the time had been kind of positivist, structural, functionalist kinds of perspectives that were pervasive with educational leadership. And I had run into critical theory. Let me quickly say that I had run into critical theory while
Or
I
it
was at
ran
Miami.
into you?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, one or the other, because I was situated, my office was situated between Henry Giroux and Peter McLaren.
Oh
Both
my
of them were,
goodness.
right. Both of them were at Miami at the same time. And so I think critical theory just kind of seeped through my walls.
Uh-huh.
And so I began to really ask some questions about the theoretical frameworks that had really grounded our work, and critical theory had not really become one of those theories, one of those frameworks that was a part of ed leadership. So I began to explore a little bit with that, and found a couple of things. One, I found that the way we had been thinking about theory for ed leadership looked as if what we did in leading schools was in a frictionless environment. And if there was one thing that critical theory did not allow for, was looking at things without considering whose rights are being upheld, whose interests are being in the focal point of our work. And so I began to ask that about ed leadership, and from that, and I'll stop talking in a second. From that
Please.
came theories. I began to explore critical race theory. I began to think about womanist and feminist perspectives. And so, yeah, so those things began to really come to the fore for me as I was thinking about the theoretical context of our work.
And I was curious if you can, so you can trace that sort of development in your thinking over time,
Yeah.
which is a fascinating thing. And I think one of the things that we're trying to get at in this season's podcast is sort of, how ed leadership as a field has grown and evolved, and the ways in which UCEA has shaped it and been shaped
hmm
by that.
hmm
And so I'm wondering how you think that UCA has contributed to that development or that evolution of theory, and what that sort of back and forth was like back.
Yeah, and back and forth is a good way to describe what was going on at that time, because there were, I don't want to say there were younger scholars. I don't want to say
There
that.
always are younger
There
scholars.
always are younger scholars, but there were scholars who were really questioning the real positivist way that we were looking at educational leadership. And one of the things that happened was we began to present at UCEA. And there were persons who were, still had great allegiance to the way we had been thinking about leadership, who were pushing, and saying this whole notion of social justice that we were talking about, and looking at issues of race and gender and social aspects of leadership. They were like, no, we don't need to do that because leadership is leadership, period. And that's something that you guys are trying to put in to the field that's not necessary. So there was real, honest to goodness a pushback on folks. But we continued to fight by making these presentations at UCEA at the annual conference. Some of us, a lot of us, got elected to be our representatives for our organization, for our institution. And so, UCEA then became really a space where our ideas could at least gain some footing. And it was just a phenomenal place to bring scholars together who were wanting to see a more progressive way of looking at leadership. Now, there was, like I said, there was some pushback. There were some good old people, I won't say guys, good old people who wanted to keep UCA the way that it always had been. And we continued to just say, no, there is a new way for us to look at how we're doing the preparation of folks to become school leaders.
Let me just dig a little deeper there because you talk about presentations that you did at UCEA and that others did at UCEA. And these are presentations that are sort of grounded in research. And so is there any sort of moment in your own research or in the research of others where you were like, yes, that's the direction we want to go in? And if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I sure can. One of the areas that I really have enjoyed exploring has been leadership and spirituality. And so I really did begin to ask a question about how does one's spiritual acumen, if you will, how does that impact leadership? And so I did a study of principles through the snowball effect, and I came up with 5 or 6 principles across the country who claim that their spirituality impacted the way that they lead. I looked at some principles in Michigan, in Louisiana, and here in Ohio, and you're right. As I explored those interviews, I went to those places and those observations. I thought, yeah, this is true. These people's spirituality is really playing a major role in how they lead their schools. And so I thought, I'm going to continue this. I'm going to continue looking at this from the data that I had collected from visiting these schools. And and the interesting thing was, Monica, I had to spend my own money to do it because there was no grant at that point for me to visit these schools. I visited 2 schools in Louisiana, in New Orleans, as a matter of fact. I visited 1 school in Detroit and several schools here in Ohio. Walking with those principals, spending days with them in their schools. And it was clear that I was on to something. And so I decided, let me continue to explore it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's been, and of course, the sort of conceptualizations of spirituality in relationship to race, ethnicity, gender, right? Like that's also a part of your work that I know personally has always resonated with me, even though I may not, necessarily do it in my own research.
I
I
get
always
it.
felt that was like, there's the universe and it works in mysterious
Yeah.
ways
Yeah.
and leaders, need to tap into that in order to be able to do some of the hard work that they do,
Absolutely.
be it PK-12 or be it higher ed.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I guess maybe if I could sort of pivot that question, same question, but just a little bit in terms of like, was there a moment you think in the evolution of UCEA in the time that you were there where you began to really think, yes, we're on the path that will take us down to take us on the road to becoming an organization that really reflects the values of the people that make it up?
Yeah, I'm certain of that. And it was when a number of us, like I said, were not only representatives from our institutions, but a number of us got elected to the executive committee, and some of us ended up being president of the organization. And so I think, in fact, I feel certain that your predecessor had to go through a whole bunch of stuff from those persons who had been part of the board prior to us, and Michelle, she stood the test of time, as I'm certain you are doing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were given the opportunity to provide leadership to the organization. Um, it must have been to some people's chagrin that we, were able to become leaders, but it was at that time during that season in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s,
Mm-hmm.
that we were able to then provide the kind of leadership that I think made a very, very big difference in how UCEA was perceived, and even the trajectory that placed UCA on. And so, yeah, it was how can I say, it was fun. Now, I can also say this, Monica, that not all of us who were progressive believed the same stuff.
True.
We weren't. I mean, some of us, some people were more conservative in their progressive thinking
Right.
than others, and so there was never this monolithic way of looking
Mm.
at what it meant to be progressive, but rather there were multiple ways that we were thinking about moving the field in a progressive way, and UCEA then became a phenomenal spot for that to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, hopefully, UCA continues to be that kind of incubator
Hmm.
for the and a place where minds can meet that
Hmm.
that can have the kind of conversations that you're talking about. Like we all don't have to agree, and yet we all know that there's something about to happen in the field, and we want to be
Yeah.
a part of that.
Yeah. 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 One of the things that I've always loved about the academy has been the diversity of mindset, the
Right.
ways that we can think, and the ways that we can bring scholarship to our thinking. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? And so
Right.
we're not just blithely going through and just using our own thoughts, even though that can be very, very important. But we're also thinking about what's already been written,
Hmm.
what's already been made available to us to consider for our thoughts. And one of the things that I've always believed in, I read Paulo Freire's work. I read Paulo Freire's work when I was a sophomore at the University of Pennsylvania. I mean, really. And it changed my life. I read Pedagogy of the Oppressed when I
Right.
was a sophomore, and it really changed the way I looked
Hmm.
at uh, at the world, and especially how I looked at teaching.
Right.
Um, and one of the things that he wrote either there or in the Pedagogy of Freedom was this whole notion of epistemological curiosity,
Hmm.
and that it our epistemological curiosity came, Freire says, because of our recognizing our unfinishedness.
Mm.
And so
Yep.
we don't have that epistemological curiosity if we don't buy into the fact that there's more for us
Right.
to know,
Yep.
And so that was one of the things that I really did find exciting about
Right.
UCEA was that many people came with a sense of unfinishedness
Hmm.
and that epistemological curiosity that said, let's explore,
Right.
let's see what really ed leadership might be about, and
Hmm.
let's see how it might be changing,
Right.
and let's see how this organization can help in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's, I don't know, makes me just sort of be grateful for a moment. Because I think, it's not always, we sometimes think that we're in the search of better solutions, but sometimes we're in the search of better questions,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which then allow us to see things in a different way that then allow us or allow leaders in the field to be able to come up with solutions that are better, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so this idea of always, and because Freire also talks about like we're in the process of becoming,
yeah,
and this idea that I'm not, as you say, I'm not finished yet,
yeah.
intellectually, spiritually,
Absolutely.
theoretically
Absolutely.
and embodied,
Absolutely. Yeah.
um, is a really hopeful way of thinking about
Hmm.
the work that we do and how
Hmm.
um, I may not finish it, but I know someone else will, and
Yeah.
that's a part of it as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's tremendous, Monica. One of the things that I had been sharing, my wife and I had been sharing about this I mean, we've been around for a while. Carol and I have been around for a while, and we were really wondering if our work had impact. You know, because we're looking at things that are happening in the world, and we're saying, wow, you know, we have come against this kind of stuff for years. We have talked about it. We have tried to be activists where that's concerned, and are we making a difference? You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so perhaps, Monica, perhaps we won't know
Right.
for a long time. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we
Yeah.
won't. We just won't know. Won't
Right.
know.
Right.
Yeah.
And and that's okay. I think actually that's almost freeing in a way, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
but then I think it makes it your role as a mentor and a senior scholar in the field, is also, important for all of us to learn about
Yes.
if we have to prepare the way for others and
Yeah.
make sure that others can take up better questions
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
may leave unanswered, right?
Yeah. You know, I was thinking about that, Monica. I was thinking about that once I got the questions, and even when you asked me if I would be a part of this, I was thinking about some of the young scholars that I remember presenting with at UCEA,
Mm,
and just excited about what they're doing now, you
right.
know. And some of them I was able to see at AERA
Hmm.
this past week. And honestly, I don't want to sound paternalistic, you know, but I was very proud
Yes.
of these young scholars who have really made phenomenal contributions
Hmm.
to our field. Um, and it gave me great pleasure to see even younger scholars coming up to them and
Right.
thanking them for their
Yep.
work. And
Right.
then they introduce me to them and say, well, this is Dr. Dantley, and he da 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 da, all that
Right.
stuff.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
I mean, it's just passing the torch, you know,
Hmm.
it's just moving on and on.
Yeah.
And that, I was really excited about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like it's how we started, right? Like there's always a
Yeah,
younger
yeah.
scholar, right? And there
Right,
always
right,
hopefully will be, right? A younger
right, right,
scholar
right,
to
right.
bring that energy and vision to the work.
Absolutely.
I know we could talk forever, but I have one more question,
Sure.
which is, how do you think over the years UCA has shaped you as both
Oh,
scholar and leader?
that's a great question. That really is. Once again, I think the camaraderie
Mm,
and the companionship of other scholars in educational leadership was one of the real benefits of UCEA. UCEA gave me opportunities to lead in ways that I had not even dreamed of. I had never thought of being the president of UCEA. I never
mm,
thought that could be, you know, would be possible.
mhm.
I was the editor for JCell, and you know, I, you know, I didn't think I would ever be an editor of a journal, and so it has given me space. It's given me space to share my thoughts. It's given me space to be a leader, and it's given me space to see other young people come, you know, to the fore, and that's been a real joy of mine. The other thing, this is a very shameless plug, but
I
but I
love it.
mentioned but I mentioned some of the folks who have made an impact on my life, and they have been all of them have been parts of UCEA. In my new book,
Ooh.
Leading with a Critical Spirit, um, New Strategies for Educational Leaders by Peter Lang. So it's out there. This is shameless, Monica. This is
That's all
shameless,
right.
a shameless plug.
It's
But
space. We're just giving you space.
yeah, yep, right. And so I really do. I do appreciate the work that I was able to do, and I had written down scholars' names who were part of UCEA that I'm not going to list
Mhm.
because I don't want to miss anybody.
Right.
But I mean, it has always been a real great space for thinking, a great
Mhm.
space for trying out new ideas, and a great space for providing leadership for folks who are so inclined. Now this is also bad. I shouldn't probably say it, and so somebody might want to get this out of this podcast. But I've told many people I have always enjoyed UCEA
Mhm.
more than I have enjoyed another
Right.
conference, and I've been vice president of a division of another conference. But
Right.
UCEA, the size,
Right.
you know, the ideas to be able to talk with people in a substantive way, that's just been a plus for me in UCEA. And though I'm retired and an emeritus dean, I plan to come to Los Angeles. I'd even, Monica, thought about submitting a proposal, but
Right.
the whole idea of going and not having to do anything is also very,
It's
very
very
attractive.
appealing.
Yeah, very.
Well, I've been told the best thing about being emeritus is you can choose what you say no or yes to. So it's
Right,
totally up to you, Dr.
exactly.
Dantley, if you want to submit anything. But it will be fabulous to have you and your spirit and
Thank you.
your thinking and your just general awesomeness at convention in Los Angeles.
Thank you, Monica.
Michael, I
Thank
can't thank you enough. It's been such a pleasure. Knowing you all these years and seeing, just how you're again you continually are refining the way that you think and the questions that you ask, and so I think I'll have your book on my summer reading list.
you. But it'll be quick. It's like it'll be quick. It's like a prim. It'll be quick reading. Quick reading.
Right, awesome. Well, thank you again, Michael, so
Thank
much,
you.
and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you.